Hello!
How's it
Long
going?
time no talk.
I know.
Oh, thanks, Jess. Yeah, I figured we'll have a little holiday cheer in the background here.
I love the tree as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello. Thank you for joining. I'm waving to peeps here. Let me just turn that off now. Hold on. Let's see how to do that. I like to play my music, but I never know how to turn it off. I always get my iPad stuck here. I have my travel playlist that I play every week. Hi guys, thanks for watching. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining tonight's solo travel series. Tonight we're going to talk all things solo travel. We're going to talk about language barriers, how to learn different languages and steps you can take to familiarize yourself with the different language in the destination that you are traveling to. I am so excited to introduce Tony. He is someone I have met via Instagram here, social media. Come to find out, we live very close, very close together. So Tony, I want to just push it off to you. These guys know who I am. And later I have some updates for everyone, but I really want to focus on what this series is about this week. So introduce yourself.
Sure. It's nice to meet everybody. My name is Tony. I live in New York and I have been traveling for a while now. And so as a result, have visited 75 countries, many of which have been solo. So I have a big passion for solo traveling. I love it. I think also traveling with friends is fun too, or a partner, but solo travel is also amazing. And I've done plenty of it. So I can't wait to share my stories about it with all of you and hear some of yours, Sarah, as well.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I can't believe you've been to 75 countries. I can't even fathom that or having the time to do that. So I'm just ready to pick your brain about all the different places you've been. But I definitely want to focus on solo travel because I agree. You know, I love traveling with my partner. I love traveling with friends, but there's just something that's enriching about traveling by yourself. I feel like you learn a lot about yourself, and I feel like you're almost able to dive into the cultures more because you have only that to rely on to really have a full experience. So obviously you've traveled solo. I would love to know more about, you know, why you started traveling solo. What was it that drove you to do that? Because I know a lot of people are very hesitant to start. So I'd love to know, like, what got you started?
Yeah, I think for me, I was just so passionate about travel itself that I would never let somebody else's schedule dictate when I got to travel. So if it was convenient for somebody else and they could come with me, that was great. But I wasn't about to wait around for my friends to be available and for schedules to align magically for me to go abroad. So I think that's one thing. And I think the second thing is, to your point, you get to really dictate your experience as a
Yeah.
solo. You get to pick which things you see. You don't have to wait around for somebody. You can interact with the culture more because you're forced to fend for yourself, so to speak. You make friends, which helps kind of discover new places that you wouldn't discover otherwise. So those are the reasons why I really like solo travel.
I love that. So when did you first start? I know you've been doing it for a while now. When did you first start? Because I have a lot of people that are in their like late teens, so like 19, 18,
Sure.
young 20s. I know, I mean, I'm going to be 35 in a month. I mean, and I didn't start till I was 30. So, I mean, obviously solo travels for all ages. It doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, obviously, at least 18, because I don't know if you could
Yeah.
travel without being 18. But when did you get started?
So, I mean, it's a good question. First started traveling a lot in college, I would say. And I think my first big solo travel trip was in college. So I studied abroad in Switzerland, but before
Wow.
this, Europe trip, which was amazing, taking the train everywhere, staying in hostels, the typical story. And I did it by myself. And so that was probably the first big test for me. But what was really interesting is, especially when you stay in hostels, it is extremely easy to meet other travelers. And then you end up going to dinner with them, you go out with them. It's so easy. I've met so many people in
Yes.
the years that I've traveled solo, and it's been amazing. So I think I started, when I was 18, basically.
I love that. And 100%. I have met some, and I think I have said this almost on every one of these, I have met some of my closest friends because I roomed with them at a hostel. One of my dear friends who lives in San Diego, her and I were roommates. A really good friend of mine who lives in London, roommates. I have a friend in Australia, roommates that just had a baby. So, I mean, I totally get it. There's so many people that you meet. And I'm an introvert. Typically, when I'm in social situations, I'm a little,
Uh,
I don't know. When I travel, I talk to everyone. I'm like a whole new person. It's kind of like my Sasha Fierce personality when I'm traveling. Like that's when that comes out.
uh,
Um, so I totally get that. And I always tell people, and I'm sure you can agree, when you're out there, it's like, yes, you want to be safe and keep your guard up to an extent, but don't keep it up enough to the point where you're limiting, your interaction with people. And someone's car alarm's going off, so I apologize for that background noise, guys. I love it. Gotta love living in the city. So you've been to 75 countries, which obviously we don't even have time to talk about all of them. I wish we could. But I'd love to know if you could pick, I'd love to know how many were solo, and if you could pick your like top favorite three.
uh,
And let it, like, if you could, even if it's,
yeah,
maybe I need more time to think, but, and kind of dive in a little bit more about those experiences. Because a lot of our listeners are new to solo travel and they're looking for places to go. So would love to get stories on your experience at, some of these places.
absolutely. So I will say my favorite places to solo travel are Australia, and I'm going to bucket Australia and New Zealand. I know it's not fair, but excellent places to travel solo. I think a second place I would say is Brazil.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then a third place I would say is Thailand. Uh, so I want to explain all of them. So I think
Yes.
Australia and New Zealand are excellent because one, the hostels are probably the best hostels in the world that I've been to, at least. There's just the quality is very high of
Yeah.
hostels in Australia and New Zealand. And so I think that's one. I think another thing is there's a lot of people on work travel arrangements in Australia and New Zealand. So there's just a lot of culture of people being solo and traveling solo, so that when you meet them, they're very game to go out and hang out. Um, and lastly, I think just Australia and New Zealand are very safe places to travel solo. It's in New Zealand, you can hitchhike anywhere without even thinking twice. It's extremely
Yeah.
safe. Now, Thailand, I would say, is also very popular because it's just a backpacker's paradise, essentially. It's cheap,
Yeah.
lots of hostels. It's just very conducive to backpacking, and therefore a lot of people tend to be solo as well. And many people do a Southeast Asia loop, and they might do part of that with their friends, part of it solo. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
and then the last place I would say is Brazil. And the reason why Brazil is for a couple of reasons. One is they have a really strong couch surfing community. And I don't know if you've ever done couch surfing. It's
Mm-mm.
like Airbnb, but it's free. It's a network where you just
Oh,
meet,
wow.
stay with them, and you don't pay anything. And the goal is, cultural exchange. And in Brazil, they have a very strong couch surfing community. So traveling solo, it's easy to, couch surf
On
across
a budget. Yeah.
on a budget. And Brazilians are, of course, just incredibly warm and receptive. And so,
Is that a website that you go to or an app? Or I would, just so anyone who's listening,
yeah, it's couchsurfing.com.
that's
And
amazing.
and it was around before Airbnb was around. Airbnb
Oh,
actually got the idea from couchsurfing and thought, why don't we charge money? Uh,
that's crazy. I've
yeah,
never heard of that, but God, I wish I would have known that when I was 20. I probably would have started traveling earlier.
it's excellent. And I've also made dear friends because you stay with somebody in their house, and obviously you build a really strong connection with that person. And most of the time they actually take time to show you around. It's not just a bed, right? They actually try to show you around the city.
Get
I've
to
had
know you.
experiences with couch surfing.
I'm blown away by that. That's actually really cool. I never knew that. And that's great advice for anyone, especially a younger, crowd that's looking to travel, but maybe they don't have the funds because they're in college or just starting
Yeah,
out in their career. And I'm assuming too, they vet the people who list their homes and things like that. Just like Airbnb, it's not just anyone can post on there, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's all review driven. So you'll see people have
Wow.
testimonials, and obviously you tend to stay with people who have more testimonials. And if you're just starting out being a host or even being a traveler, you can get your friends to do testimonials for you just to make sure, you have a couple reviews before you start. But once you get going, it's just very easy to make friends. And there's also, beyond just the stay aspect, there's networking in cities. So you can actually just do couch surfing meetups in cities, and
That's so cool.
yeah, which is amazing.
Look that up, everyone. If you're looking for a place to or a way to travel and you don't have the funding, because we all know accommodation is the most expensive. I think it's more expensive than flights half the time. It's the most expensive part of travel.
Agreed.
And if you can get that for free, you are eating a lot more baguettes at a cafe in Paris, let me tell you. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I love that. I definitely have to agree with you with South America though. One of my favorite places I've ever been by myself is Peru.
Oh,
It was amazing. I didn't spend much time in Lima. I spent most of my time in Cusco, and then I did the trek and all that jazz. But what I love about Cusco is it's actually there's a ton of expats there, and there's a ton of English speaking countries that come there because Peruvian Spanish is they speak very slow and very proper. So if you're looking for a place to go to learn Spanish and you want to be in the culture, Peru is very popular for that. And Cusco has so many schools. And
oh,
I didn't know that until I went. And so you'll go to a bar and it's, Australians and Germans and people from England and then Peru. Like it was so cool because there was somebody from like every country at these bars. It was amazing. And so it was just really cool because every single person that was there was in either a similar experience or some sort of experience similar to you. So I don't know, it was just people were very relatable and everyone is so used who lives there to tourists coming in or expats coming in to learn Spanish and things like that, that it's normal. It's not like, oh God, another tourist, they're used to it and they love it. I mean, it's probably one of their biggest revenue streams, for their economy. So I definitely agree. When you go to South America, it's like the most warm, friendly, beautiful culture I've ever experienced in my life. I love it so much. So when it comes to, obviously you've been to all these places, you've been to Thailand, they don't speak English. You've been to Brazil, they don't speak English. You've been to so many countries where English is not the first language. And I know you know many languages. So I'd love to know more about when you are traveling to these different areas, how do you get ready, for those language
yeah,
barriers, especially in countries, we'll talk about the ones you do know, obviously, because that's a little more simple, but for everyone else who, maybe they only speak their national language.
yeah.
How do you approach that, when you're traveling somewhere new?
Yeah, I will say that, we're lucky being native speakers of English because obviously, whenever you travel, that is generally the international language that people use. So that obviously helps a lot. But I will say that, it's funny, it's changed over time. What I used to do is I would print out these sheets of common phrases like on pieces of paper and study it
Mm-hmm.
a before I arrived and made sure I at least knew how to say and pronounce hello, thank you, goodbye at a bare minimum, but then also probably things like may I have, how much, just how do I get to um, very common phrases I would try to learn and have those sheets printed out. Now, fast forward to 2020, so much easier, right? You've got
Yeah.
Google and download the dictionary from Google Translate so that it's on your phone. So even if you have a bad Wi-Fi signal, you've got it handy. And it's just so easy. You can even talk into it. Google Translate has the ability to take a picture of a Chinese menu and you can get to English. It's just incredible. So now there's literally no excuse now to not.
Yeah.
But back in the day, what I would do is do a bit of preparation, print out some papers, and even now I do certainly try to know those three phrases at a bare minimum. It goes a long, long way.
I agree. I definitely, in the guide I just published, actually, I have a page where you can write out some of your key phrases for those that might not be technologically advanced. I know sometimes I'm not. But I agree, knowing, like, I always want to know key phrases like I'm hurt or I need help or, you know, the where is, you know, a lot of time too, especially for me, I know enough Spanish to get my way around to places and to get where and what I need. And I mean, even in a lot of countries that might know English, they know a lot of Spanglish. So you can like start it in Spanish and then go hospital if you don't know.
Sure.
If you don't know, you know, like the actual word that you're saying, they'll at least kind of get the idea of what you're doing. I've also talked to people that do a lot of when you are in a country and maybe not familiar with the language as much, and maybe you don't know a lot of the key phrases. What do you feel about the pointing? I have a rough time with that because I'm from the service industry. That's where I started. And pointing's not a good thing. And
Right.
so I have a hard time with like, oh, you know, it's one thing to point to a sign and stuff like that, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Because I would love to know, since you've been to so many different places, if you've seen people do that and how others react. Because I'm not a big fan of the pointing at everything.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it's definitely dependent on the culture. It's probably worth looking up a little bit of, that's another good thing to do in general is cultural pause, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
in Thailand, for example, I remember putting my foot on a table and that's like, or on a bench, and that's like the
No.
thing ever. And I was quickly scolded for that. There's, cultures where staring is common. There's cultures where staring is impolite, so it's good
Mm-hmm.
to get a little bit of knowledge about that before you go, just so that you're not making cultural faux pas. But with regards to body language, I mean, body language is everything. So especially when you don't speak the language. So I think, I don't know about pointing specifically, but using your body can express so much. And I think playing a little bit of charades when you're go a long way, actually.
Yeah, like drink.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, yeah.
So that's helped me out a lot.
Well, it's almost like, I mean, sign language is pretty much a universal language.
Yeah.
You know, so those different motions that you can do. Yeah, because I've seen so many people be like, and I'm just like, not a big fan of the like real strict pointing. Like maybe do it nicer. And so I always like to know what other people think about that. So we do have a couple questions that came in prior on the topic of language. So when you are getting ready for a trip where you don't know the language at all,
Yeah.
how much time do you spend preparing? And when do you start? You know, what I know you said Google Translate, things like that, but is there any other resources you use to get yourself ready for a trip to a country where you don't know much of the language, if any, at all?
I think if you're a guidebook person, the guidebooks often have just really easy to start with language in kind of the back pages. So Lonely Planet, and every single Lonely Planet, there's definitely language tips, which is great. I think what I do, I'll be honest, I actually spend a little bit of time doing the research ahead of time, maybe like half an hour. But then where I spend time actually reading it and consuming it is on the plane,
Yeah.
because if you leave that plane, you're going to have to potentially start using the language. So that's when I really start to read the papers or read the book and prepare myself.
Yeah, and it's a great way to pass the time as well. And I'm sure there's people on the flight you can even practice with, and that's always fun. I always become friends with my rowmates. I call them when I'm on a plane. Usually I'm sitting by the window, and so you become fast friends with those people, so they skedaddle when you got to get up.
That's
And so I've practiced phrases before with my rowmates on a plane. Specifically when I was going to Peru, that was definitely an area that I was like, okay, do I say this good? Like, or is it really bad?
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I would go on flights sometimes where they didn't speak English, weirdly enough, and so you
Mm-hmm.
had to say water and bathroom and um,
Yeah, I was on a flight once where the flight attendants were all French.
uh-huh.
And I was just like, oh, my Lanta. Speaking of Brazil, hi, Juliana. We have someone from Brazil on. We were just talking about Brazil. And I saw we had someone from Mexico and Chile. This is awesome. We were just talking about how amazing South America is for solo travel. And so Brazil, Chile, that's awesome. And let's see, what else do we got here? If you guys have any questions around language barriers, solo travel, anything you want to know about solo travel, drop it in the comments here as you're scrolling through. We would love to answer some of that. So also, I wanted to ask, in those areas, how do you make your way around when you are traveling and maybe you don't know? Because I know a lot of times I know how to say phrases, but I can't read it at all. There's some languages where like I may know how to say it, but I can't read, So how do you find your way around, or have you experienced that where you're somewhere and the signs are not at all in English and you're able to kind of navigate through the city or the location that you're in?
Yeah, this is another just funny story to talk about because it's changed over time. I used to print out the maps, or I'd have the guidebook with the maps, and I would make sure to mark on the map where my location was. And
Mm-hmm.
how now you've got your smartphone. What I do is I download, again, because Wi-Fi can often be spotty. I download the Google map. You can do that, by the way, and you can star the places that you need to get to, and the Google map will still have the geolocation so that you can see on the map where you are.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a great way, obviously, to know how to get around and whatnot. But what I do for every trip, even now, is I absolutely plan how I'm getting from the airport to my accommodation. And then if I'm ever doing a day trip or, something where it's more than just the walking or public transportation in the city, I plan that as well. Not like when and where, but just the the bus number that I have to catch, the train number that I have to catch. Like if they're
Mm-hmm.
involved, I need to, keep track of that and say this train only comes 4 times a day, so you need to plan ahead. But I definitely make sure I know how to get from the airport to my accommodation because that is the number one thing.
Same. Yep.
And if you plan ahead, you can save money. Obviously, you can take public transport and not be stuck in an expensive cab. And so I
Mm-hmm.
plan that ahead of time. And I always, now with Uber, again, this is another thing that is less worrisome now. It's easier to get a safe option, but in the past, always go to the official taxi stand. Don't take some random person's ride. I've been cheated multiple times doing that, unfortunately. So
Oh, well,
just
thank God all you got was cheated out of money or something. You know what I mean? That's scary.
there's way worse things that can happen.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
But now, yeah, it's I definitely plan how to get from the airport to my house.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I also use, like, when I'm in big populous cities, City Mapper is a really good app on
It
there.
it is, yeah.
Yeah, I love City Mapper. In fact, I didn't know about that app until I was in London. And yes, I can read everything, obviously, there, but I don't know where anything is. And I didn't even know that app was anywhere else for a while. I thought it was only in London. And I would go to London almost every, like, 4 months for a period of time. And it was the best tool ever. And then I was like, oh, wait, I can even use this at home. Cool. And then I started seeing all the other cities it's in. I love City Mapper. And then also, I do the same thing. Before I even go on a trip, I make sure I know where the nearest police station is, firehouse, embassy, all of those key points of interest.
Embassy for sure. I take down the phone number, uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and know where it is. What I do
Yes.
for every trip is I do the Google Map and I star obviously my accommodation, all the main sites. I star the restaurants I want to go to, and that helps me plan days so that I can see on the map what's clustered around each other. Where can I go and I can knock off 4 sites and then go to dinner at that place, and that helps me tremendously as well.
And that's so good that you say that. And for everyone watching, like, as you're planning, if you notice, a lot of key things we keep saying is before I go, I do this. Before I go, I do this. Your trip starts way before you even go on your trip. Whether that, you know what I mean? Whether it's when
Absolutely.
you're researching the destination, the safety, all of those things, then you want to start planning out what you're going to do. And now, yes, I come from the world of events. I am someone who likes everything planned to a T. I have to say that. Even if you're a spontaneous person though and you don't like that, you at least still have to plan out some parts of your day, you know, and that all starts before you even go. And so, you
And
know, and you're sitting there,
I have so much fun planning that stuff, you know?
same.
It
Hmm.
you get the anticipation and you get the excitement, and it's as you say, part of the journey and part of the fun.
Yeah, I get so excited. Like I'll be like, oh my God, I can't wait to go there. I'll look at the menus. So I'm already planning what I'm even gonna eat when
I,
I'm on these trips. Also, because when you're in a like when I was in Peru, I didn't to me the word koi sounds like a fish. It sounds like it would be a fish. I think there is a fish called koi, to be honest.
yes.
Yeah, no, but in Peru it's guinea pig.
Oh, I
Okay?
didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Yes. And it was delicious. But then I was like, I found out what it was.
You
And it's kind of like when you eat like rabbit or something for the first time and you're just like, what? That's someone's pet at home.
exactly.
So I always do that. When I'm traveling somewhere where menus are in a different language, before I even go, I translate the menus at home so I know what to order so I don't get a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because I'm not someone that like escargot. I wouldn't know what that is if I didn't know because of people eating it. I would order escargot and be like, oh, and then snails come on my plate and I would run 9 miles in the opposite direction. So yeah, so a lot of your prep for language and what you're going to do when you're on site or at your destination happens way before you go on your trip. I mean, it's all starts from the beginning there.
Absolutely.
Um, so I know itinerary planning, like we're talking about that, and I know that's something very fun that you like to do. Do you have a method to your madness? Like, is there something like when you're planning your itinerary for your trip? Do you have a method and do you have like a routine that you go through? Like for anyone who's like looking for ways and they're completely disorganized, have no clue what to do. What can you share with them?
Yeah, so I usually like to create a Google document so that I can refer to it. And I start with the logistics of, when is my flight? When do I arrive? The, um, how do I get from the airport to my location? I make sure I know the exchange rate because I'm going to be taking money out of the ATM at the airport. And then I kind of write that stuff down so that I know. And then I think about how many days do I have per city. So I think about like from the start of to the finish of the trip, how many days, if I'm moving between cities or how many days do I have at each city. So I think through that and I try to parse out the itinerary at a macro level. And then I dig deeper per day and it might not be per day, but what I try to do is per city, I try to think through all the places I want to see and then I prioritize. So I say, here are the top things I want to see, but then if I run out of things to do, here are other lower priority things that I could do. And
That's great. Yeah.
then to my earlier point, I think through each day, might take me to a different quarter of the city or might even take me outside of the city. And so I do try to plan a little bit that as well, and try maybe to maintain a little flexibility if weather is involved. So if you're trying to go to the beach, you want to make sure you go on a nice day. So you kind of need to be a little bit flexible. So I try to do that. I try to keep it at a high level, like what am I going to do in a day versus an hour by hour type of situation. That's just how I travel, but I know other people like to plan it hour by hour. Some
Yeah.
people don't. And so I think it's completely up to you.
I'm the same way. It's like I like to plan out what I'm going to do, but unless something's like a super high in demand place, I don't necessarily
Yeah.
get like tickets really far out in
I,
advance or plan it to the time because I am someone where it's like I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow. But then what if I have a few libations the night before? I'm not going to want to get up and then be like, oh, and have like the worst time at a museum because you know,
yeah.
hung out way late last night. So I
Yeah.
am someone who, as much as I plan out, I do the same thing. I plan out my days. I don't plan out, okay, by noon I have to have had to done X, Y, Z, unless it's a super, if I have like a very tight timeline and it's not a long enough trip. Um, because I don't like to feel like I'm like forced to do something either. Because I might wake up and be like, you know what, I don't want to go to that museum today. I'm more in the mood to go on a boat or whatever that might be. Um, And I don't like being held to something each day, but I like to have an idea of what I'm doing. So this way I at least know, okay, these are the days I have it planned. I can switch things around still because I'm not locked in with a ticket or anything like that. So unless it's like a show or something you really do need that ticket for in advance, I tend to do that a little bit more last minute, I have to say.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. And when it comes to, so when I am on the road, and I don't know if you're the same way and things like that, are you more, I just love to know because I like to know what other people are like. Are you more of a relaxed vacationer or traveler? Or are you someone who likes to go to museums and see all the sights? And because I'm definitely someone who, if I'm in another country, I can lay on a beach here. If I'm in another country, unless it's a specific, I'm going to Cancun, you know, of course
Yeah.
I'm gonna lay on the beach. But if I'm in like Europe or South America or somewhere like, I want to see every historic 9 million-year-old site that I can possibly see because I think it's so fascinating and cool. What are you like when you're traveling?
So we would get along perfectly because I'm the exact same way.
I love it.
I'm going to be on a beach. I can do that in the US, or I can do that even in New York or in New Jersey. So I'm all about cultural sites, things that you just really, the things that the place is known for. That said, I will absolutely, if the beach is truly, Ipanema Beach in Rio, like
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I will prefer kind of the cultural attractions or, activities as well more than that. And I do try to have busy days. I try to actually take advantage of daylight to
Mm-hmm.
see things. Obviously, nighttime is good, but I try to wake up relatively early and get a good start to the day so you take advantage of the daylight and see things during opening hours. And then at night, what's nice is you can take a pause between about 4 to 5, like 5 o'clock things usually close, and from 5 to 8 you can take a nice pause at your hotel and
Yeah.
then go out to dinner again. So
I completely agree. And especially as, you know, when you are traveling solo, the more you could do during the day is the safer as well. You know what
absolutely,
I mean? You want to make sure, especially because I am someone who I like doing the touristy things 1,000%. But at the same time, I also like to go off the beaten path a little bit and explore like areas that maybe aren't the most touristy, which
yeah,
you need to be smart about too, because you don't know what type of area you're going into. And so during the day is the best time to do those type of things. So I agree. I mean, I am someone who I could be out until 2 in the morning and I'm still up at 7, wide awake, ready to go. It's just who I've always been. Um, and so yeah, and I do the same thing. Like when I was in Greece, I mean, I was in Mykonos and they have beautiful beaches. And of course, but I still fit it into my agenda. Like I was like, okay, today's going to be a beach day. And then
yes,
tomorrow it's windmills and things like that. Like, I build it in because yes, especially if they're known for the beaches. Like if I'm in Ibiza, I mean,
yes,
I'm just going to be on the beach clubbing the whole time, which is
sure.
fine, but that's the culture there. You know, so it's definitely always fun to do those type of things. So I if you could give our viewers a takeaway,
Okay.
1, 2, 3, what are your, let's say three, I would love you to dive into this. What are your top 3 tips for someone who's just starting out in solo travel?
Oh, that's really good. I'm trying to think. Um,
No pressure.
top 3 tips. I would say number one is get over the fear almost, just like take that leap and do it. And even if it means you're traveling solo in someplace very safe, where maybe you should travel solo within your state, within your city, within your country as a first step. See how it goes, where you're comfortable, and then But I'm all about taking the leap. Um,
That's really good advice. I didn't think about that. Take it in your own country, like the places you know first.
yeah, absolutely. I think the second thing is have know yourself so that know how many days you think you can go without talking to anybody, because I think my limit for that is 3 to 4 days. I think after 3 or 4 days I start to get really anxious and wanting to meet somebody traveling, and so just know that in your brain so that you can kind of put yourself out there, whether you're at you need to sign up for a group trip. Sometimes there's like group excursions or like a
Yeah.
tour know that you should sign yourself up for that every couple of days just to ensure that you're going to have
I
that.
love those.
Yeah,
That's how I've gotten to so many places because like after a couple days I'll go on Viator and I'm just like, okay, we're gonna do this day trip to Bath or like wherever. And I'm always on the bus by myself, but because of that people talk to you and
yeah,
then you just build
you,
I mean, I've made friends with 90-year-old grandparents on trips. I don't care who you are, I'm talking to
for
you.
sure. For sure. Um, and then maybe a third one is probably to, I think, huh? I don't have a third one. I think those two are good.
I think they're great.
Yeah,
I definitely think getting through that fear,
yeah,
obviously, fear is something that holds us all back from so many things.
yeah.
But I don't know what it is. If you let fear hold you back from traveling, you are missing out on so much
Um,
because what can happen to you when you're in, the Himalaya mountains can happen to you while you're on your front porch. Let's be real. Things happen everywhere. So why hold yourself back because you're scared of, something happening when you're on your journey? And again, going to what we said before, just getting prepared and doing the research prior, whether it's for languages or whatever that is you're doing, the more prepared you're going to be, the more, you're going to be able to fully immerse yourself in the experience because you're going to have that confidence going into it. And that's extremely, extremely important.
yeah. I thought of a third thing actually.
Oh, yeah, good.
Because when you're solo traveling, it tends to be more expensive. You're not splitting meals, you're not splitting accommodation, you're not splitting cabs or things like
Mm-hmm.
that. It is important to just plan out advance a little bit because that can potentially save you money. So I think through your accommodation, think through your transportation plans, think through other things like that, just to make sure that you are, because when you're traveling with more people, that stuff gets cheaper.
Oh, 100%. And I completely agree. And I'm someone who I'm very light with my breakfast and lunch. I usually I'm not a big breakfast person, but I'll usually do like a coffee or some type of, and like a fruit or something simple.
Yeah.
Lunch, I'm very light. I like to sit at a cafe, have a drink, maybe a salad, sandwich, very light. I reserve my meal budget for dinner because I want to go somewhere. I want to take part. Like if I'm in Germany, I want a beer. Like I want to like enjoy like the local cuisine and what they're known for. And I feel like you do that mostly at dinner.
I
Um, and if I'm able to, like some hostels I've stayed at have communal kitchens. And so like I'll even like make my own lunch and like
I do.
pack a sandwich.
I absolutely do that. I like to, if I'm staying in a place that doesn't provide breakfast, I will buy like really easy things like yogurts or fruit or things that are just super easy for me to eat in the morning. That way I'm not spending
Yeah.
time looking for that and wasting time not doing the attractions.
Mhm.
The same exact way with lunch, to your point. Yeah, sit down at a cafe or get a grab and go meal and enjoy the atmosphere, but
Yeah.
not,
People watching, my
not
favorite thing to do.
but I also probably don't have a 3 hour sitting down meal inside a restaurant because that's 3 hours of daylight that you're not necessarily seeing and doing things. So I'm
I
with.
completely, yeah, exactly. And if you have a mini fridge in your, let's say you are staying in a hotel and you find yourself with a fridge, same thing. I'll get yogurts, I'll get like string cheese, I'll get like little snacks
Yeah,
and take advantage because anywhere I can save money because I want to be able to pay for that ticket to go to this museum or to go here and to go there. I try to save my money when it comes to like shopping, souvenir type things and food and things like that. The only place I try not to skimp too much, I'll stay at hostels, but the hostels I stay at are well known. They're usually
sure,
bigger
sure,
brands, not
sure.
super whole. I don't want to end up like the movie hostel. So I'm very picky. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, don't
Yes,
watch it. It'll terrify you guys.
right.
I'm very particular about that. But I do stay in hostels, but I'll stay at like A&O, more well-known ones.
Sure.
Because the one area I just try not to skimp on money is accommodation
Yeah.
because I don't want to end up in some back alley area like that you don't know and like you can be
Yeah,
unsafe. Like that's the one area that's when you're the most vulnerable is when you're in your safe space and your guards down, your doors shut, things like that. And so I'm usually like I make sure my accommodations within like a 5-block radius from any type of like either a police station or a hospital. I like to make sure, just because, especially being a woman by yourself, it's just even an extra layer of safety you want to take when you're traveling. And especially over the years with all the heightened, granted, I'm going to be 35, so I would think I'm past this mark, but with how human trafficking is and things like that right now, like, you just can't be more prepared. So I'm like, okay, we're staying here, we're staying there. And so I'll stay in hostels, but I make sure that they're in very touristy, nicer areas solely so that it's the one area I try not to skimp on, I have to say.
Yeah.
I'll take Spirit Airlines everywhere in order to have a nice accommodation. And for those who don't know what Spirit Airlines is, it's literally like plastic seats. It is bad.
They'll charge you to breathe.
Yes, exactly. If you need to take a breath, that tissue is $5 to blow your nose, guys. It is crazy. It's so funny. Does anyone have any questions for us? I haven't seen a lot of people have come on, off this whole time. And I saw we've had people from a ton of places. Does anyone have questions on solo travel, how to pick your accommodations? Spirit's the worst. It really is. It's horrible. My family lives I have family like outside Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And so New York to Myrtle Beach, you can get like a round trip flight for like $50. And so I've taken it once and never again. So we do have one question. How did you learn both Portuguese and French?
Yes. So I learned French in school. I took it in middle school and high school, and then I studied abroad in Geneva. So that was really good practice. And then Portuguese, I learned a trip. I did an internship in Sao Paulo, and I learned Portuguese there, which was awesome. And so those two languages have come in very handy, particularly French, actually, because there's a lot of Francophone countries. So, but Portuguese also comes in handy because it's really similar to Spanish, and that's helped me in Spanish-speaking countries. So
I love that. And like the fact that you went places to learn. It wasn't just, I'm going to sit at home or be in a classroom and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You actually went to these locations to dive into the culture to learn the language. I think is amazing.
No, it's great. I mean, I think to the extent that people can spend more time in a country, like a month or so at a time,
Mm-hmm.
the best.
Oh yeah. When I went to Peru, I thought I was only going to be there 16 days. I ended up there almost a whole month.
That's amazing.
Well, because Hurricane Irma hit
Florida.
And so I was supposed to fly into Miami, and all the flights to Houston got booked right away because that's the only other hub. Like, so Houston and Miami are like the two big hubs to fly from, Peru into. And so luckily I was still in Cusco. So I was in this amazing picturesque town, and I ended up staying there for like it was 50 soles a night for my nice hotel. So it was like, this is great. Cause I think that was like, I don't know, like 25, 30 US dollars a night.
That's
and so I ended up staying there for it was about like 27 days.
That's so cool.
It was amazing. I got to make my own chocolate with real cocoa beans. I mean, I have to say, when I came home though, I was itching for cocoa tea. I got pretty hooked on the tea there. I was definitely hooked on the tea and the candies and the leaves and all of that jazz. Jess, what is polyglot game? Do you know what that is?
Oh, polyglot means you speak multiple languages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I guess poly means multiple. Glot, I don't know. It must be a Greek thing. But yeah, it's, and I agree. Slow travel is the way to go. I think it's,
Heck yeah.
Probably most of the countries I've visited have been fast travel, where it's like I'm there for 3 days to a week, and it feels fast.
Mm-hmm.
The times that I have done longer trips have been just absolutely the most memorable. So
oh yeah, I love slow travel. I don't like to feel rushed. It's like you don't get it all in, and then I have kind of a bad memory actually, and if I'm on a very rushed trip, a year will go by and I'm like, what did I even do? And that's the worst, when you get to experience a place and then you're not able to remember a lot of it. So we have a few more minutes left, and we have one more question here that I would love to get to because I think it's important before we sign off. So we got a question: how often did you guys usually travel before COVID? So I'll pass it to you first.
Okay. Well, I think I guess I would ask the definition of travel. I would say I probably traveled outside of my city at least every month. And so that might be in New York, for example, going to the beach farther out on Long Island. It might be going to upstate New York, um, or it might be doing kind of a weekend in, uh, you know, wherever in the US. So did try to travel once a month, and some of that was business trips too. So I'm counting that as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I try to do internationally is I try to do 2 to 3 international trips a year. Um, I would say, and one of them is probably, to be honest. So maybe
Mhm.
personal international trips a year. That's generally what I try to do.
I love that. We're very similar in that sense. So I mean, before COVID, I probably was on the road every 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of it had to do with my work. I manage, the US event program for a huge software company. So I'm at trade shows and conferences all the time. That's actually how I got my passport for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Was just because of my job. Yeah. And then I was just like, well, now that I got this,
Yeah.
and then I went crazy. And then same thing, I try to do at least 2 to 3 international trips a year. Usually one is work related, whether to the Caribbean or over to Europe.
Yeah.
And then I try to, but I, even now in COVID, I don't travel per se, but I'm not from New York, you know what I mean? It's New York City area. So I travel home to see my family quite often, which is about a 7-8 hour drive.
Yeah.
So, I do that. And, I'm weekends away, taking excursions to places maybe I didn't really do prior. But yeah, I definitely I was telling my mom which she's on here. And I was telling my boss actually, and I was like, wow, for the first time, I'm actually getting my money's worth of my rent that I pay to live in this area.
Fun up.
We pay all this rent and we're never home. So
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Tony, thank you so much for doing this with me. I loved it. It was so much fun. And I hope everyone who watched had a great time and at least learned a little something different and new today about solo travel and you're inspired. If you wanted to say a few final.
Thank you, Sarah, so much for hosting me. I'm loving what you're doing with solo travel.
Thank you.
Into the world and bringing lots of amazing guests to your channel. I'd say keep doing it. I'm so glad I was a part of it, and I hope we can do one of these again because it was just so much fun. And
Thank you.
Any of my followers are on, please make sure to follow Sarah at Solo Travel Woman.
Thank you so much. And I will link your Instagram profile in the description. So keep an eye out, everyone. I will have this up on Instagram Live shortly, and everyone's profiles will be linked. I'm also going to shoot it over to my YouTube and Tony's YouTube, so we have those there. And now for some big news I was hoping to share. I'm going to share with you guys. So I wanted to announce to this group that, as we all know, the Solo Travel Woman podcast that I've been planning to start for a while, but I've been terrified and then just decided, just like solo travel, just do it. We'll be launching on this Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. The first full episode and mini episode will be published on Sunday. And so the Solo Travel Woman podcast is going to be a mix of what we see here, just really inspirational stories and tips about solo travel, whether you're a man or woman. Again, the Solo Travel Woman is because I'm a woman who solo travels, but I hope to inspire everyone. It's going to have guests just like we have here. And I would love, if you would love to be a part of that one day as well and join me. And then the mini episodes are really just about content that maybe just won't take up a full 40-minute full podcast episode. So sharing my top 10 apps or, tips and things like that. Those are where those mini episodes are going to come in. So the first series is going to be focused around traveling safely after, in a post-COVID world and what that looks like. and how, you know, you can do your research. So again, like what we were talking about today, getting yourself prepared and what that looks like for you. So stay tuned. I do plan to continue an Instagram live series. The days might change a little bit because what I was thinking was utilizing this as kind of a launch pad into the podcast release. So every Sunday, this might take place now, where who's ever my guest for that show will do an Instagram live as well, and then go into launching the podcast. So that's my news, guys. I'm so excited to finally officially announce it. So that's kind of cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited. It's just, I like to talk. So
Yeah.
just another outlet for me to talk. Figured it'd be perfect. But thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great night. Stay safe. Start decorating. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.